Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and to harness creative expression to heal ourselves and to heal our world. Welcome to HORF, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape.
Hello, Ricky on the intro this week. Our guest this week is Joris Grey, he, him. Joris is a leadership coach for queer entrepreneurs who don't fit the norm and want to build a business and team they desire. With 12 plus years of business experience and 6 years of experience coaching entrepreneurs, Joris is able to provide clarity, strategy, effective communication, and leadership tools to help queer entrepreneurs move the needle on their business goals and create businesses that make selling easy and joyful. When Joris is not growing business, he's walking his dog, reading stacks of books. Current favorites are sci-fi and homoerotic novels, or thinking about food. This one's been a long time in the making. Welcome to HORF.
Oh, thank God for Ricky. Ricky's the best. Speaking of people who have our backs and do the ops.
Absolutely.
So I went through a phase in middle school where I was trying to figure out what my nickname was supposed to be. I was named after my dad, whose name is Daniel. My full given government birth name is Danielle. And at the time I wanted to have an original name
Of course.
because I was like, well, I'm named after my dad, which now I think is cool, right? As an adult, and I have a really solid relationship with my dad, I'm like, my name kicks ass.
Yeah.
And the reason I go by Elle is kind of to sort of separate my business life from my personal life, so that I have this online persona who's different from my home personal life, but also because I worked at a deaf school for a long time and my name in ASL was Elle.
Ah,
And so I went by Elle for so many years, starting in college all the way through my first career, that I like that name.
hmm.
So I like to go by that name. It sounds nice.
Does it feel like a nickname-ish to you?
It feels like a name. It feels like I have
Yeah.
two names and both of them are fine.
And they're separate identities.
Kind of, but they're both me. But I'm also
Yeah.
gender fluid, so it works to have two names.
It works so good for you, though. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, this fits.
Yeah.
Plus, Ricky's spouse is also named Danielle and goes by Danny. And so when
Ah,
we're in the same space together, we share the name, Danny
yeah.
and Elle. And it's just a lot less confusing for everybody.
It's so convenient, right?
Yeah, it just worked out really well. Danielle was a very popular name in the Midwest in the 80s.
Hmm.
And so for us to be able to just sort of have part of the name, and that was already kind of established when we got together, and it
Love
wasn't
that.
something we had to figure out. But when I was in middle school, I wanted a nickname.
Yeah, I get it.
And when I was born, my parents thought they were going to call me Danny.
That's a good name for you.
Yeah, it never stuck. It never stuck.
Hmm.
There's 2 or 3 people in the whole world that call me Danny. They didn't know if I was gonna be a boy or a girl. I was either gonna be Daniel or Danielle. They're like, "Well, Danny fits," and that's what my dad went by his whole, growing up years, and they thought it would be really special, and as a little kid, I wasn't a Danny.
It's like either you are or you aren't.
Yeah, but my sister had nicknames coming out of everywhere, and I was like, "Well, that's not fair." And she still does, but now I call her by her full name most of the time. And she didn't realize that I was doing that, and one time she thought I was being really condescending, and she's like, "Why'd you call me Katrina?" I was like, "I always call you Katrina." She's like, "What?" And my partner was like, "Yeah, she calls you that all the time." She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were being bitchy."
Yeah, I wonder if this is part of many people who go through transition or are trans or non-binary trans, that they're so focused on their nicknames when they're younger because our language in our times weren't Like they weren't developed around trans identities and stuff. So I wonder if
Yeah.
like that a focus on nicknames is true for many people. I need to ask. Like, curious about
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious about that too. Because I definitely was going through a like, well, who am I?
it. Yeah,
Like, what do I want my name to be? I wanted it to be something. Well, I also wanted to be a writer, and so I wanted something like catchy.
me too. Like I was always thinking about my writer name.
Yeah, and there was already a Danny, a boy Danny in my class,
Mm,
and so I really wanted to be Danny B. I wanted it to be, I wanted the last initial to be
yeah.
part of the name. And I knew that
Yep.
the Danny had to have an I in it because that was like different than the boy
Cool.
Danny.
Yeah.
Yep. And Danny B. And I could never get my teachers to say the whole thing together. So they would be calling out paper names and they'd say Danny. And they're like, he's in the other class. I'm like, no, that's me. And it's Danny B. And they would just never do it. And so I gave up.
Oh yeah, it's so good. No.
Yeah. So, and my sister started kind of giving me nicknames in high school, and some of them, those have stuck, which between
Yeah.
the two of us, but no one else calls me those. So, but my sister and I have lots of nicknames between us because that growing up together as our only playmates thing
Yeah.
does that. Yeah. So, anyway, welcome to Horf. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have been trying to do this for months. And
Yep.
I am so glad that we made this work. It is the
Me
beginning of
too.
the day for me. It is the end of the day for you.
It is.
Yeah. So we are gonna get this done and dusted, and then you can go to bed.
Yeah. So I have some other appointments after this, but yeah,
Oh, okay. What time is it there?
it's 6.
Oh, it's not that late. Okay. Okay. I thought it was I thought it was later.
Yeah, it feels late. I'm like, oh, time for bed.
Yeah. Usually by the end of the day, I'm ready to like change into sweats and not do anything.
Same. Same. Like after 3 p.m., like don't call me. Like I'm done.
Yeah. It's like I am in my sweats. I am not
Yeah.
facing the world. I'm gonna eat ice cream. Yeah. So I am happy to have you here today. I am here in North Dakota. You are there in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
And so we've been trying to make this work with time zones and tech issues. And today's the day. It must mean it's like an auspicious day since we finally made it work.
Yeah.
So I am going to ask, how have you received care this week?
I love this question. And every time the answer was different because we kept on rescheduling.
Right? It's a different question. Yep.
Yeah, it's like a good one to check in with yourself daily. So it's starting grim already. Like one of my walking buddies died a week ago.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. In a really horrible way. So I got a lot of support from friends. And like it's one of those moments in time where it matters who shows up for you. And it also matters if you ask for help, right? I'm not the most vulnerable guy. People who meet me say, like, you're such a vault, like, you're so closed off to people. So I started learning to show my vulnerability. And I think as a guy, that's really tough, like, for everybody, but it's not gender specific, but for guys specifically, there's this toxic masculinity culture where you cannot show, like, the inside of your heart, right? And I think, especially for trans men, it's really hard because we think we need to be really toxic, be really strong and masculine and really out there, very toxic as well with girls. And I started de-learning all the things that I know about masculinity like a couple of years ago. So this is one of those things like I want to be vulnerable. I want to be a guy who you can build on, especially because I'm a leadership coach. I want people to see that I lead by example. And that is also talking about grief, talking about my vulnerable spaces. And I asked a friend this morning to go to the place where my walking friend died and to lay down some flowers and candles. And I specifically asked for a friend to come along so that we as guys could just cry there together and that he could see me in a vulnerable place. And that was a step for me, like honestly, in
Mhm.
friendships. And he was there, like he showed up. And I know how fucking busy this dude is. And still, he was there outside of my office. And we walked together to the place where my walking friend died. And I don't know, just people are reaching out and checking in, how you're doing, all these things. So that's how I received care. Yeah.
That is some really deep care. to be
Yeah.
able to be like held and witnessed and to have space to be vulnerable like that.
Yeah. It takes a huge level of trust for me. I'm unlearning. Like my default would be to run away from people and just hide or like pretend that I'm super strong and I am like people when you meet me, like I'm a super masculine guy, but that doesn't mean that I cannot be vulnerable in my strength, and that could be my strength. So yeah,
Yeah,
default would be running away.
that is a really profound example of receiving care. Wow, thank you for sharing that.
You're so welcome.
I think even sharing that is another level of vulnerability.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I want to be perceived as a certain like person, like we all do, right?
Mhm.
And for me, especially at the start of my transition, I had this image of myself how I wanted to be perceived. But that
Mhm.
was all embedded in toxic masculinity. I'm like, that's not like I'm not that person. And still I'm trying to show up, even in like more professional settings such as this. I'm trying to show up as the leader that I want to be led by. And
Mm.
that is this. Yeah.
Mhm. No, I get that. I think nope, I don't actually have a thought there. I think you said it really well. I don't need to add to that. So you talked about being a leader and showing up as the
Mhm,
leader that you want to be led by. Can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about your work and what you do with leadership work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with queer businesses specifically. I think I want to start there because that's where also the leadership ties in.
Yeah, perfect.
Specifically with queer businesses because I think we are a marginalized group in and of itself, right? And
Mhm.
especially as business owners, you are already like in a place where you need to overcome yourself constantly when it comes to sales or putting yourself out there. And I think for queer businesses in specific, the whole world tells you that you don't belong,
Mhm.
right? Every day we get taught like we don't belong, we're not welcome here, we're like not the norm because we are a marginalized group. And I see so many queer business owners struggle with that piece alone in and of themselves, and they don't believe that they could be successful as a queer business owners because they don't fundamentally believe that they belong. And there's not yet many examples for queer business owners of successful leaders, for example,
Mhm.
in queer business spaces. And I saw so many queer businesses that wanted to find their place in success and in the online world, offline world, but they ended up in all these like very gendered spaces,
Yes. Yes.
like either women's groups or men's groups, and super like even their language is so exclusive and like their queer people are excluded from these spaces just by how it's marketed, all these business groups and business coaches and business leaders. So I wanted to change that, and I wanted to show also like queer businesses that you can be really fucking successful as a business owner, especially when you're queer. And I think in addition to that, I believe that we as queer business owners do things a little different. We need to learn, we can learn, we have to, you don't have to do anything, but you can learn that it's more so about building support networks and communities and doing like a rising tide lifts all ships. But especially for queer business owners, we can learn that we can do this all together successfully. And then profit is the cherry on top.
I've definitely noticed the gendered nature of business groups. There's a group I want to apply to be like do one of their monthly keynotes to, and it's like the Women's Connect group. And I already know going in that it's going to be an environment where I don't quite fit in,
Oh,
like
yeah.
right off the bat. And I'm working on my proposal, and I'm like you said, queer business owners, we do things differently, and we already have kind of a difference about us and what we do and what we talk about. And that's going to be part of my proposal is like, yes, I'm perceived as a woman. Like I'm gender fluid, femme. I don't quite fit in this group, but I think what I have to offer will like get them to think about things a little differently. And I still think
Mm,
I fit enough to like be really powerful for your group.
yeah.
I don't think I'll fit in 100% of the time. I'm probably not going to come back. Like I don't want to come every month. Like that's I might be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I really think that, like, how I do things and think about things is important for other people to see.
Absolutely, because they cannot adapt their blind spots if no one points them out to them.
Right. Yep.
So I had to like mask so much early on in my transition, like just dealing with gendered language alone,
Mhm.
because I was only in female business groups at the time.
Right. Yep.
And I had to like really sit through all that gendered language just to get some business support. And it's not the fault of like the business coach or anything. There's no fault here. It's just outdated, an outdated way of doing leadership consultancy and business consultancy.
Yes. You do somatics in your leadership training and,
Yeah.
like, personally as well. That's a word that I've heard a lot more lately than I used to hear it, and I don't know if it's one of those things that once you hear it, you keep hearing it, like, you just notice it once
Mm.
you know it, or if it's actually becoming more integrated into what people are doing.
I think it's both.
Is it both?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I remember when we were emailing and prepping for this, you were like, I would love to talk about somatics. Like, please ask me about somatics.
Mhm.
So, this is me asking about somatics. What can you tell? Like, what is it? like, like, give us a crash course and why you love it and what it does for us. We don't have a weekend retreat here to go through it, but we have a few minutes on a podcast.
So normally I work with people for 12 months, right? So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah. This is not a 12-month interview.
no, and I have to work with people for 12 months to fully teach them how their body works for them. That is the
Mhm.
main part of what I teach. What I do with a lot of people is your body can never lie to you, but we don't even know how to tune into our bodies to get the wisdom that we need out. Most of the people that I work with don't even know how to notice their own body. Does my stomach gurgle? When does it gurgle? When does my heart skip a beat? Or what is that tight sensation in my belly? Do I have a tight sensation in my belly? What does that tell me? Without adding stories. So, what I differentiate on a lot is that there's so much mind clutter as an entrepreneur, and especially a leader. When you start to lead people, shit blows up in your face. Like you get triggered so fucking much.
Oh my gosh. Well, and not even just leading people, but just like doing our jobs, right? My Instagram and my threads got
Yeah.
suspended last
Oh,
week.
yeah.
And like I lay down for a nap and they were there, and I woke up 2 hours later and they were gone. And you want to
True.
talk about like, what is my body telling me?
Oh, tell me. So, what did it do?
Oh, I ended up with like a rock. It felt like a rock, like right
Oh,
in below my solar plexus at the top of my
yep,
stomach.
yep.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. So I have a stomach ache." Because like I think fairly in tune with my body. I have chronic
Mhm.
illnesses and I get migraines, and so like I definitely notice when things change to the point where
Yes.
people are like, "You couldn't feel that." I'm like, "No, I really did."
But people are surprised, right? What they actually learn about their own
Yeah.
bodies and the stories that we make up about them.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm anxious. Like this is giving me anxiety because I've spent 6 years building up my Instagram
Yeah.
for my art business. Like this is a
Yep.
huge loss for me, and I
Yep.
don't know what's going to happen. I don't like the unknown."
Yep.
I had to go to work at my part-time job. I had a little break. Usually if that feeling doesn't go away, I can usually kind of dance it out if I do some.
Hmm.
I'm not a good dancer. I'm like an emotional dancer. I do it in my
Mm.
studio all the time. It's like
I love
really,
that.
it's weird. But
No, it's perfect.
I just move my body the way it wants to move, and I can usually get
Yep.
like close the stress cycle. This is something new I've done in the last 3 years, and kind of get feelings through my body. And it didn't work. I felt worse.
Mm.
It was an abdominal migraine.
Mm.
I had to take one of my emergency migraine meds to kind of get it to go away, but it still held on for like 3 days. And I ended up
Ugh,
having to take
sucks.
one of my second line migraine medications to finally get it to let go. But it
Yeah.
was definitely like a physical response to an external
Yeah.
stressor. And I was like, wow, I've invested too much emotionally into Instagram.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I've just been kind of trying to like work around it and just like wait to see what happens. But it's really
Hmm.
stressful.
Yeah. So this is exactly like on your own, this is already stressful, right? But as soon as you bring it into teams and your migraines determine how the outcome of the meeting will be, then everybody gets a migraine, right?
Right.
So
Or like when I was teaching,
exactly.
the attack started when I was teaching elementary school during
Yeah.
like right before the holidays. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I work a lot around conflict, for example. Like if someone has a conflict, how do you deal with it? Like what kind of sensations come up in your body? Do you let your migraines, for example, determine how everybody should vote so that the meeting is over, you can lay to bed? Or do you tend to your migraine first and then
Mhm.
have the meeting accordingly? So we work a lot around body symptoms and what they mean for you without telling. I asked, like one of my clients said, like, oh, I think I'm stressed. I'm like, are you? And then eventually she learned that she wasn't stressed at all. It was totally different symptom. And she learned to navigate on like the minor sensations of her body. And it also
Mhm.
comes up when you do sales, and like your body never lies to you.
Right.
When you find someone icky, your body will tell you like this is not a client for you. And so we first learn to tune in those sensations, and then I start coaching.
That's really great. I mean, that was something we had to work with my students on when I was working at the
Mm,
school, because a lot of students with sensory disabilities will have other disabilities along with it. And a lot of my students had neuro differences, so like
yeah.
ADHD, autism, things like that. And so it can be really hard to notice and identify body
Hmm.
sensations and notice and
Yes,
identify emotions. And so we did a
absolutely.
lot of sensory therapy and things like that, and I benefited from that as well. I wasn't
Yeah.
diagnosed with ADHD until I was 36 years old,
Mm.
but let me tell you, I learned a lot from the sensory therapist before that.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this should have been a clue."
Hmm.
And, like, looking back, it was.
Yeah.
And,
In
maybe he
hindsight.
knew that I had ADHD before I knew. I think a lot of people knew before I knew. I think maybe I was the last person to know.
Or people didn't have the words for you as a
Right.
human.
Right,
Yeah.
but, like, that whole what is being able to identify a feeling, and
Yeah.
either a physical feeling or an emotional feeling, that's a
Or both.
skill, and
Yes.
I think it especially I don't know what, Dutch schools are like, but I know for sure in American schools, we start really early teaching kids to ignore their bodies
Hmm. Same here. Like
by not letting them go to the bathroom. I think it starts so early by
horrible.
telling kids, "You don't get to go pee."
Yeah. Or you have to raise your hand to pee, or you can only go 2 times a day. And I'm like, no. So,
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I did in my classroom where, yes, definitely in elementary school, you can pee whenever you have to pee, you have a small bladder.
mhm. Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
classroom had a bathroom attached to it, so, like, why wouldn't I let you
Mhm.
go?
Yeah.
But even in middle school and high school, there were some teachers who were, like, really, really strict about it, and I was like, "You know what? I want you to trust your body,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna trust you to trust your body if you trust me to keep a safe classroom and stuff. Like
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
two-way street. I'm going to trust that you're not going to take advantage of a relaxed bathroom policy
Yeah.
and just go all the time. And then you can trust that I will let you go when your bladder says that you need to go."
I love
And they were
that.
like, "We can just go." I said, "You have to tell me where you're
Yeah.
going.
If
I
you
would
need to go, you
prefer
need to
like
go.
I won't count you tardy if you come in at the beginning and say I need the bathroom and then you go and then come in after the bell."
Yeah.
Like, the communication, trust your body, trust me, I trust
Yep.
you. Like, this is what being an adult is, and that's what I'm helping you do. So much of our problems, at least here in the US, as adults with trusting our bodies and not knowing when we're sick or ignoring when we're sick, so much of that starts in school.
And you need to like be super sick to stay at home, and all these things, right, show up when we have a business. They blow up in our face. Like people have so many strict professional quote unquote rules, and they come to me because they want to create their business professionally. So they want
Mhm.
to up level and become professional. I'm like, okay, let's unlearn all that shit, because you need to learn. For example, if you are in meetings, you need to learn to eat with your coworkers, and you should learn to eat together as a team. And we need to unlearn so much when we lead, because otherwise you will get angry. I just posted this on Instagram. You get angry because you didn't have a snack, or you get angry because you were angry at the bus stop, but you blow out that anger on all your team members because you think someone triggers you like in that meeting, and you cannot really deal with the first feelings like instead of the
Mhm.
fifth person you're meeting. So It's exactly right. It's embedded in our culture that we cannot trust our bodies, but also we mismatch our actions based on what we think our body's telling us. So,
Yeah.
and that can cost an organization a lot of fucking money,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
We fire the wrong person. We let conflict blow up. We are super overtired, and then we make a decision with our money that's not really
Mm-hmm.
informed well. All these things, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned professionalism, and like
Yes.
I immediately tense up because
Oh, you tense up. Good.
well, because
Interesting.
I don't like that word. I pushed back against that a lot when I was teaching
Mhm.
because the whole concept of professionalism, I mean, maybe you'll agree with me, but I'm not going to assume until I say it. Professionalism tends to be very sexist, racist, homophobic,
Yes. Yep.
transphobic, and classist,
Absolutely.
and ableist.
Absolutely. All these things.
Yeah,
I
and so
agree.
the farther you are from being a cis heterosexual able-bodied white man,
Yep. Yep.
at least here in the US,
Same in
the
Europe.
harder you have to box yourself in to be
Yep.
considered professional.
According to certain type of standards that don't fit the majority of businesses.
No,
No.
and trying to be seen as, a professional woman or a professional queer or a professional disabled person, you have to work
Yeah.
really, really hard to try and fit in those boxes,
Yep.
and you're never going
Yeah.
to.
No, and there's so many better ways to do business and do it professional according to those standards, because our professional standards are actually embedded in care, right? Can we care
Mhm.
for each other? Can we tend to each other? Can we create a support
Yes.
network? Right? That is professionalism to me.
Yeah, and I always said that professionalism is an ethic, it's not a look. So, like,
Oh, that's a good quote. I'm going to steal that for you
yeah,
from you.
do it, please. I haven't trademarked it. I think everyone should believe that.
It's 100% right. It's ethics, right?
Yeah, and that was part of the thing about teaching too, is like I don't have to dress a certain way to be a good teacher. I have to
True.
show up and support my students and follow the code of ethics.
Yes.
I realize that I look younger than I am, and sometimes when I
Mhm.
wore jeans and flannel to school, you couldn't tell the difference between me and a high schooler, but
Yep.
all the high schoolers knew I was their teacher, so, like
Yeah. 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 It's how you show up for the other.
exactly, and I showed up for them, like, and if I was
Mhm.
in the classroom and they could trust me with their stuff, that's what was important,
Yeah.
not if my shirt had print on it. Because I had some of the funniest English teacher shirts ever. Like, please don't tell me I can't wear a shirt with writing on it. I spent years cultivating that T-shirt collection. I had one that said
Yeah.
there on it. Like, I think that's
Oh, I
funny.
love it. Yeah, it is. It is super funny. But this is also like this ties into the conversation around professionalism, right? I think people get clog their own drains so much that they cannot show up for other humans anymore. And
Mhm.
some of my work is declutter that clog first. Like, what's at your back end, right? What's happening all there? Is it way too complicated? Let's clean that up first so that you can
Mhm.
show up for people again, so that you can be human to human. But with all that stuff that you're doing in your business, I don't know what the God people are doing in their business. I'm like, that's not a priority for you. So let's first declutter all that shit and then
Mhm.
show up as a human again. So that needs to happen, right? And then
Right.
we can learn to human.
Yeah. Oh, learn to human. I love that. I mean, I use, like, automation and stuff for some of my and not even a lot because I'm an artist, and so, the only things I can really automate are, like, if someone signs up for my newsletter, I can automate it being added to my CRM in a different program, right?
Yeah.
Like, minimal automation, but, like,
Yep.
one of my grounding pillars for myself is, like, to be relentlessly human and to
Yeah.
just show up authentically. So if that means one of my
Yes.
newsletters goes out and it's a little weirder than I mean, they're always a little weird, but if it's, like, a little weirder than usual, like, I would rather alienate somebody who
Yep.
decides that I'm just
Yeah.
not for them.
Oh, 100,000%,
Yeah,
right?
than produce
Yeah.
content that's just kinda meh.
Yeah. Yeah, like the safe-ish.
Yeah. So like one of my
Mm.
my newsletters this summer that went out had a video of my dog in the car at the car wash cuz which I guess that's not relentlessly human, that's relentlessly canine. But
Yep.
we had taken her to the vet and they had to sedate her to get images of her knee because they had to manipulate her knee to get the images and she had ruptured her ACL.
Mm.
And so she was in a lot of pain. And so they sedated her and she had come out of sedation, but she was still really, really stoned. She was like really drugged.
Oh.
And because she was in pain and had been a really good girl at the vet, her two favorite things are our drive-throughs, fast food drive-throughs and car washes. So
Cute.
so we took her through the drive-through and there's like the flashing lights and like all the whooshy whooshy.
Yeah.
And so I have this video of her like
Totally
swaying
stoned.
back and forth, like with her eyes kind of glazed. And I was pretty certain it was a religious experience for her. I'm pretty sure she saw God.
Aw.
And it was so
That would be God.
cute that I had to put
Yeah.
it in my newsletter. I'm like, you guys, it was such a bad week. She injured her
Oh,
knee, like all this stuff went on. But here's this really cute video of her at the car wash, just like totally zoned
so
out.
cute.
I said, and also we
That's
went and
so
got a
cute.
pup cup at the ice cream place.
Aw, that's so
Those are
cute.
her two favorite things. And I'm like, I thought that was so much better than like whatever professional,
Corporate, yeah.
here's what I'm doing in the studio.
But isn't that like so many queer people need to unlearn that image first, right? They need to
Mhm.
wash themselves off of like the cishet toxic culture first to learn what their zone of professionalism is. So,
Yeah.
and it's hard for people. Like such because there's so much fear attached to it, right? Like, will I then
Mhm.
make money? Can I pay my bills? I think you can pay your bills a lot better if you just be your
Be your
authentic self and show up in your business as you are.
yeah.
But learn first what that looks like.
My podcast was named by my dog. I think I have a pretty good start on showing up as myself.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
I don't think I ever learned how not to. I mean, I
Mm,
tried. There were lots of times where I definitely tried to put on this very professional persona,
yeah.
especially like when I was student teaching, and one of the staff at the school was like, "You really need to rein it in," and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh,
Yeah.
okay." That was really hard. That was a really hard period for me. Was like not
Yep.
being me. I
Yeah.
knew I didn't want to do that. I was like, I can't have. Okay, I know right now I need to be at a school where I get to be myself.
I think also our
Um,
communication starts to be so much more clear when we are authentic and we bring that to our businesses. Like it declutters all levels of our business if we learn to show up authentically, because then we can also authentically set our boundaries. We take accountability. We can authentically delegate because we learn how to do these things as ourselves.
right, and I think that's most of the people I know who are now solopreneurs or business owners or who have gone the route of starting their own business, I think that's why most of us have done it, is
Yep.
because we didn't fit in
True.
wherever we were before,
True.
or something happened in
100,000%.
our life where we're like, I can't do this anymore.
Yep. Yep. That's me.
I
Like, I cannot work for a boss. Like, please no.
Yeah, and like for me, like I was kind of selling art on the side before, but I burnt out at teaching and I got really ill and
Hmm.
I couldn't work full time in that setting or any setting anymore. I
Yeah.
need more time to rest, and that's just how it has to be now.
Yeah.
And I've said before I never wanted to be a business owner. I just wanted to paint. But
Mm.
I think I'm kind of getting the hang of
Mm.
doing this, because I have a community that I've found and sort of created around me, because doing it by myself is the worst.
But it's impossible to do this on your own.
Right. I'm only a solopreneur on paper. Like, I have a
Right.
huge team around me that,
Yep.
they're not paid necessarily, but, like, they're my huge support team. Right.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I learned leaders to integrate like all parts of their life so that they are supported, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
let yourself be supported. Don't do this alone.
Yeah. So, I don't know what the landscape over there is. I'm not, like, physical landscape, but, like, what the culture is like
Hmm.
in the Netherlands or even greater Europe as far as LGBTQ rights and accessibility and things compared to the US. It's over here, it's pretty scattershot. It really
It
depends on where
is.
you live. Like,
Hmm.
because it's such a huge, like the US is so vast. It's so huge. It's state by state and even city by city. So what is it like there as far as, since you work with queer businesses, do you work
Hmm.
exclusively with Dutch businesses or do you have international clients as well? Is it more accessible and easier to be queer in the Netherlands, do you think?
Ooh, these are two
Is
like
that
really good questions.
or
So
is that too broad of a question to cover in the time
no,
we have
I
left?
hear I'm a pretty good listener. I mean, that's part of my job, right? So I
Yeah,
hear you
yeah.
say like, what's the cultural landscape? Do you solely only work with Dutch businesses?
Yeah, sorry,
Is it easier there?
yeah, that was a lot, sorry. I can't help it, I'm a curious girl.
No, it's perfect. So the first question, it's so not easier here as a queer person.
Okay.
It gets worse and worse. I think by the day, it gets worse to be a queer person.
So the rise of the far right is a
Yeah,
global problem.
it's a global fucking problem. It's been there for a long time, but now it's like kind of breaking through, I think.
They can
Um,
say it out loud. Like, they're saying
yeah,
the quiet
yeah,
parts out loud. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and everybody's allowing them. So that is the fucked up thing. But it was far right for a long time, especially in the Netherlands. Like the Netherlands is not so, what's it called, like progressive as
Yeah.
people think.
Yep.
Especially around trans rights and LGBTQ rights. Like it's horrible. I'm lucky that I have insurance and
Mhm.
stuff gets covered, but the rest, like I can be open about like being trans on this podcast, for example, but I
Mhm.
cannot be in like quote unquote real life. What does that even mean? I work international, so for me this is real life. But
Yeah.
I can be open about being trans in closed circles, and I think that is so fucked up, right? I have to tell a lot of people around me like I am stealth. You cannot talk about my transition. You cannot tell people that I'm trans because it's very dangerous for me. Like
Mhm.
it's horrible. So that is the first part. I think it's not
Yeah.
better. I think it's getting worse. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a lot like that in a lot of places here too.
yeah, yeah.
I lived in Idaho before, like, for many years, and then I
Mm,
mean, I grew up here in North Dakota, and then I moved to Idaho, and then I'm back here, and I'm lucky to be in a small town that's decently supportive. I mean, really small town, 800 people.
yeah, that's
Um,
small.
yeah, but, my partner hasn't had any problems in my hometown,
Mm,
which is good. She lives in Chicago. Ricky lives in Chicago most of the
yeah,
time, and Chicago is, like, way better than where either of us were living before. But
yeah.
Idaho, that is not a fun place to live. I mean, my friends are
Mm,
there. I love them. I have a lot of happy memories, and I still feel homesick for Idaho, but I don't think I could
mm,
ever move back.
yeah,
Like, it's just not safe.
no,
I mean, the far right never left Idaho. Like, in other
mm,
places where people are surprised at that they
hmm.
have, it's like, oh gosh, everything's like so radical now, and I'm like, yeah, it's always been that way.
It's always
There's
yep,
always been pockets of that in Idaho that never
yep,
got quiet. Like,
yep,
there's always been a contingent of that, very vocal in Idaho.
yeah,
So, one last question.
yep.
What is one true thing that you have learned from your work with queer businesses?
Okay, that was not on the list.
Oh, I thought I included that one at the end. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, don't apologize. It's a good question. Let me think. One true thing. Oh, yeah. I think one true thing that I learned from queer businesses. So I've been a business coach for a long time. Like I think
Mhm.
7 years or so. That's pretty long. Like it's
Mhm.
pretty solid business.
Oh, yeah.
I've always done it on the side. It was always my
Mhm.
side hustle, and then I grew into full time coaching. But the last year and a half, I started working solely only. Well, majority of my clients are queer. You can be like if you're an ally, you're also welcome.
Mhm.
Um, Absolutely. I work international, so that's good to know, I think. But this, the one true thing that I learned is that queerness in and of itself is really messy, but we don't allow that mess in our businesses. We think we can
Mm.
exclude that beautiful precious, amazing, glorious mess, we think we can
Mm.
exclude that from our companies. But I think if we allow in that chaos, our businesses will be so much better, so much more authentic.
I love that so much. We are beautiful messes, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
That
so
was
welcome.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I
I
had a
loved
great
it.
time.
Me too.
I hope the rest of your appointments this evening go well.
So they won't. It will be horrible.
Oh,
I
I'm
know so.
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I have to visit with a couple of friends. We will visit the site where our walking friend
Oh,
died again. So
oh,
I will meet
okay.
more people who are also grieving.
Well,
Yeah,
it's better to grieve together, I think, than to do it by yourself.
absolutely. That's what I learned. Like, that's what I forced myself into. Like, okay, I need to do this with other people. I cannot run away.
Hmm.
I cannot hide from this. I need to feel it. I need to be with other people, share it. Yeah,
We'll take care of you.
yeah. I will take care of them. They will take care of me, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you currently taking new clients for
Yes.
coaching? Okay, so where
Yep.
can people find you?
Oh, so my calendar opens up in January again. So
Okay.
I onboard people now for January. The best way is Instagram,
Okay.
and you
Sounds
get a
good.
feel of what I actually do. That's
Okay. So what is your Instagram handle?
Joris underscore question mark.
I'll find it and put it in the show notes.
Like me and spelling is like
It's
I
fine.
kind of think what it how to write it, but yeah,
Okay, that's fine. I will find it and put it in the show notes, and people can find you
yeah,
to come work with you.
yeah, yeah. They can.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time
so
today.
much. It was really nice. Thank you for your brilliant questions.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Whorf. To get the complete show notes and all the links mentioned on today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit whorfpodcast.com. Join the blessed herd of St. Winkus. By signing up for our newsletter, you can get Whorf episodes delivered directly to your inbox. What's more, you get invitations to our monthly Coffee and Biscuits chat, where you get to hang out with Ricky and Elle, talk about the show, and connect on the topics that mean the most to you. You can sign up for that at whorfpodcast.com. If you become a patron for only $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, help pay my editor, and join a community of caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, the chronically ill queer femme who is very tired, on this episode of Whorf. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Whorf is hosted by Elle Billing at Ellen Wink. Audio editing by Ricky Cummings at Ricky Poo. Music composed by Ricky Cummings. Whorf is a production of Ellen Wink Art Studio LLC, all rights reserved. Whorf can be found on all social media platforms at Whorf Podcast, at HOORF Podcast. I can't help it, I'm a curious girl.